This is historic Fort Pulaski.
Fort Pulaski National Monument is located on Cockspur Island between Savannah and Tybee Island, Georgia. It preserves Fort Pulaski, where in 1862, during the American Civil War, the Union Army successfully tested rifle cannons in combat, the success of which rendered brick fortifications obsolete. The fort was also used as a prisoner of war camp. The National Monument includes most of Cockspur Island, containing the fort and all of adjacent McQueen's Island. Following the War of 1812, U.S. President James Madison ordered a new system of coastal fortifications to protect the United States against foreign invasion. Construction of a fort to protect the port of Savannah began in 1829 under the direction of Major General Babcock and later Second Lieutenant Robert E. Lee, a recent grad of West Point. The new fort would be located on Cockspur Island at the mouth of the Savannah River. In 1833, the facility was named Fort Pulaski in honor of Kazimierz Pulaski, a Polish soldier and military commander who fought in the American Revolution under the command of George Washington. Pulaski was a noted cavalryman and played a large role in training revolutionary troops. He took part in the sieges of Charleston and of Savannah. The walls of Fort Pulaski were 11 feet thick and thought to be impenetrable except by only the largest land artillery, which at the time were smoothbore cannons. These cannons had a range of only around a half-mile, and the nearest land, which was Tybee Island, was much further away than that. It was assumed that the fort would be invincible to enemy attack. Lieutenant Lee remarked that one might as well bombard the Rocky Mountains as Fort Pulaski. Though completed in 1847, Fort Pulaski was under the control of only two caretakers until 1860, when South Carolina seceded from the United States and set in motion the Civil War. It was at this time that Georgia Governor Joseph E. Brown ordered Fort Pulaski to be taken by the state of Georgia. A steamship carrying 110 men from Savannah traveled downriver, and the fort was seized by the state of Georgia. Following the secession of Georgia in February 1861, the state joined the Confederate States of America. Confederate troops then moved into the fort. By December of 1861, Tybee Island was thought to be too isolated and unprepared for conflict and was abandoned by Confederate forces. This allowed Union troops to gain a foothold across the Savannah River from Fort Pulaski. Union forces under Quincy A. Gilmore began construction of batteries along the beach of Tybee. On the morning of April 10, 1862, Union forces asked for the surrender of the fort to prevent needless loss of life. Colonel Charles H. Olmsted, commander of the Confederate garrison, rejected the offer. Fort Pulaski was prepared for a possible infantry attack. However, it never endured a direct land assault. Using 36 guns, including the new James rifled cannon and Parrott rifles, Union troops began the long, sustained bombardment of Fort Pulaski. The rifled projectiles could be accurately fired further than large and heavier smoothbore cannons. These cannons could be fired from up to 4 to 5 miles away. Within 30 hours, the new rifled cannon had breached one of the fort's corner walls. Shells now passed through the fort dangerously close to the main powder magazine. Reluctantly, Colonel Olmsted surrendered the fort. Only 2 soldiers, 1 Confederate and 1 Union, were injured in the attack. Olmsted's decision to surrender haunted him for decades.
Honey.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome.
It's a neat place.
Yeah, it is.
Colonel Olmsted stated, "We were absolutely isolated beyond any possibility of help from the Confederate authorities, and I did not feel warranted in exposing the garrison to the hazard of the blowing up of our main magazine, a danger which had just been proved well within the limits of probability. There are times when a soldier must hold his position to the last extremity, which means extermination, but this was not one of them. That the fort could and would be absolutely destroyed by the forces of the enemy was a demonstrated fact. While our own power to harm them had been reduced to a minimum, I am still convinced that there was nothing else that could be done." Gilmore was able to succeed in overtaking the fort almost entirely because of his rifled cannon, which caused massive damage in the walls of the fort. Gilmore's triumph won him promotion from engineer captain to brigadier general.
This must be the quarters where they slept. They got the little wood stove here, the bunk beds, and there's the cannon. Let's look out the little hole here to see. Oh yeah, good view.
Within 6 weeks of the surrender, Union forces repaired the fort and all shipping in and out of Savannah ceased. The loss of Savannah as a viable Confederate port crippled the Southern war effort. With the fort secured in Union control, General David Hunter, commander of the Union garrison, issued General Order number 11, which stated that all slaves in Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina were now free. President Abraham Lincoln quickly rescinded the order, but later issued his own Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. At this time, Fort Pulaski was made a final destination on the Underground Railroad, as slaves throughout the area were freed upon arrival on Cockspur Island.